You want to go viral. You want to grow your socials. If you go deep on these 3 things, I promise you, your entire content strategy will change for the better. Number 1, you're not actually creating for your niche. You think you are. You've built content strategies. You decided the content programming. You're brainstorming. You're creating. And you're out there and you're doing stuff, but it's not breaking through. And the problem isn't necessarily the ideas or even the creation. And we'll talk about some of those things. The problem is way back in actually how you're creating for your target and for your persona. We've done that. We've struggled with that. And sometimes we've got to spend a little bit extra time to really feel, who are we talking to? We've got to take it from broad down to narrow. How do you move from 5 or 6 different people, a first audience and a secondary audience and maybe a third audience, and we think we can provide for all these, to really down to one person, to one human, one professional, one person that you're going after that's on the other side of your camera, that's on the other side of your content, that's out there looking for value, looking for teaching, looking for education. I know you get pushed in a lot of different ways, and sometimes what you really feel like you need to do is create lots of content. But sometimes you got to slow down and go way back and say, are we really creating content specific for this audience? And deep down, you know if you are or not. But we a lot of times get caught up in our systems and how we do things, and the engine has to keep flowing, that we don't really hover over and go up to 50,000 foot and say, what is really our challenge? We're not breaking through, and we've got to understand what it is. And sometimes it's the things that you know that your audience targeting isn't really good and you're not really creating content for them. So here's a short, quick exercise that we've talked about a lot in our content strategies that we develop here at Maverick, and way back when we were doing this at Universal and some of the other times, is we created a persona mission statement. It is, we create blank and blank content for blank. Who's our target audience? To what? What do we want them to do? Be successful, win something, grow their business. This tight little box of a persona mission statement will help you so much as you go into what topics, what challenges, what are the opportunities, what are their fears, because those are the things that are going to drive really relevant content. So here's an example. We create entertaining and educational content for busy moms to help them win in the kitchen. It's a very specific way to think about how a brand that is all about food and their target customer is their mom, and there's an emotional reason why they exist, which is to help their families in the kitchen. By the way, not saying that all women belong in the kitchen, just for the record, need to say that. Here we go, another one. We create educational content for business leaders to help them grow their business. Now, you might want to go a little bit more specific. What types of business leaders? Are you specifically talking to Fortune 500 business leaders? Are you talking to dentists and CEOs that run small businesses? All of that extra detail is really going to make your persona very, very tight and very, very specific. But we've got to take the time. So this isn't new. This is something you know. But sometimes we don't take the time to get really specific. And a lot of times in marketing organizations, we take the target audience that comes down from a brand team or from some research. And what we've got to do is we adopt that for social and digital, because remember, we're trying to build audiences. We've got to adapt that still. We've got to connect one-to-one back to our brand and to our business, but we got to be willing to adapt that, because we're running a magazine. We're running a radio station. We're running a TV network as we program out our podcasts, our YouTubes, and our socials. And so to have that, we've got to have that editorial mission statement to go deep on our niche. So to wrap that up, you have to know your audience deeply. You got to be specific, and you've got to create value for them regularly. Number 2, your ideas suck. I'm sorry, they do. If your content's not breaking through, it might be a problem with your ideas. And I want to be really specific with the process, because it's one thing to know your audience. It's one thing to create really good content. But before you create really good content, you've got to come up with really great ideas. And I mean really great ideas. If no one's watching your content, it's possible it's because you're not spending a lot of time in your ideas. Now, one of the things that social media professionals are notorious for is we got to fill up a calendar. We got a lot of content we've got to create. And so we have a quick brainstorm. We list everything out. We quickly decide what we want to do, and we get running. I've been a part of that before at other brands that I've worked at. It's hard, right, to take that time in ideation and creative development. But I'm telling you, the best in the world spend way more time on research and ideation than a lot of social media professionals do. So the charge to us is, how can we do that? How can we take more time? How can we take our processes that are intended to be planned, sometimes a little bit agile, and we force ourselves to go deeper. So here's one exercise that we've done over the year. We call it the expand and refine exercise. So the first thing you want to do in a brainstorm is for sure expand. Come up with an expansive list of ideas, a lot of ideas. Now there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that's crap, but remember the number one rule of brainstorms is don't say no, or don't say that's a bad idea, right? Because that kills the energy in a brainstorm. But you want to spend a lot of time creating an expansive brainstorm, lots of ideas, dozens, maybe hundreds of ideas, but a lot of those aren't great, and that's okay. Then you move into a section that we call refine. This is where you start to tag the ideas that are really, really good, and you start to separate the good from the bad. You're cutting off the fat of the bad, and you're letting it go, and you're saying these 10 or 12 ideas, there's something really here, but they're not perfect yet. A lot of people want to take that and then run and jump to production, or run and jump to script writing, but it might not be ready just yet. What you need to do now is really push those ideas. You need to add tweaks to those ideas. I used to ask this question to people that were interviewing for a job at Universal, and I would say, pretend as though tomorrow is National Roller Coaster Day and we've got nothing planned. Let's have a little bit of a brainstorm. I kind of wanted to see how they were at ideating, and there's always that first idea. Well, let's put a point of view camera back at someone screaming on the roller coaster. And I'm like, okay, that's a good place to start. Now, there's some people that are like, great idea, we're done, let's run and go. But what we have to say is we have to challenge ourselves and say, that's not going to cut through. That's not going to break through enough. We've got to be more unexpected. We got to be more shareable. We've got to be interesting. We've got to be compelling. How can we push it a little bit further? Okay, so we've got a point of view camera that's facing back. That's a good start, but it's not good enough yet. What if we actually added a second person into this and they're actually playing a trivia game and they're screaming the trivia back and forth? What if we added like a clock on it and a timer and some sound effects that really made it feel like a game show on a roller coaster? Now we've got something. Now there's ways to continue to push that and make the hook better, add some re-engagements in the middle, make the payoff really, really good. But that's the kind of effort I mean when we start with expansive ideas, we refine them, and then we take those refined ideas and we spend time in the creative development to push them to where they're more shareable, more engaging. So rule number 2, you've got to elevate your ideas, and you've got to spend a lot of time making sure the idea you're starting with is really, really great before you get into let's go make it. And lastly, number 3, you've got to create for social, really for the platform that you're in. But we're talking about how are we creating new media content for social? Now, look, we bring a lot of history to the table when we're doing what we do as social media professionals, brands. We've watched a lot of TV from way back in the day, and that's kind of a leaned back experience, right? It's a different kind of way of consuming content, but that's trained us a lot. But a lot of times communication professionals and social media professionals will steal things from places like TV naturally and think that's how you tell stories. But man, it is a completely different ball game in feed. And we know that, but are we taking the time to really get specific with how we would alter this, how we would create this for social? There's so many social media professionals that act like getting the content calendar done and getting the content out is the win. But I know people that literally have all of their reels inside of Excel, and they are tracking every single one of them from a retention standpoint. And they're really trying to be best in classic content. And that is really what it takes to do this. So here's my challenge for this area. Is go back and look at your last 10 reels. Go take 10 minutes and go find the last 10 reels and just kind of watch them. Then take another 10 minutes and go find who you think is doing this best in class. It could be a creator, could be another brand. Spend some time watching their reels and just kind of scroll through. This is doing research, right? Just kind of trying to learn. Now go back to those 10 reels and think, what would I do different? How would I hook them different? How would I create more compelling, engaging parts in the middle? Should we use more captions? Could we do something different with music and with sound effects? Every detail matters. And so I heard someone say this the other day and I really loved it, is when you're a content professional, you have to sweat the small stuff. You know, maybe not emotionally because we got a lot going on in life, but in content, we've got to sweat the small stuff. We've got to care about those first 4 seconds. And trust me, I've been in your seat. And sometimes I feel like I'm in your seat right now as I'm looking at what I want to do as a creative and what feels natural to me, but I'm challenging myself to say, that's not going to cut through. You got to change it. That's not going to break through. We got to do something different. So sometimes even when you've got a vision for what your content needs to look like, when you bring it to a social strategist, a YouTube strategist, or a content strategist, they've got to be the ones that are like, it doesn't work. My team all the the time tells me, even in these podcasts, that open was a little bit long, but it's okay. We're going to cut the first 2 minutes because they know deep down what it's going to take to break through. That is what it's going to take to break through for you as you're thinking about content creation. Now, I know that you're listening to some of this and you're saying, all right, so it's targeting, it's good ideas, and it's creating good, compelling content. And I started this by saying that you know some of these things. You're not spending enough time going deep in some of these things. So the challenge for us as social media storytellers inside of Fortune 500 brands, whether you're the director or the social media manager, it's your job to set the standard. It's your job to look at all of these 3 categories and say, are we best in class here? Is there a way that we can get better? I've been doing this for a long time, and these 3 things, while simple, will change the game. Thanks for sticking with us here at Radical Content. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you did, share this with your team member. Share this with your boss. There's a lot of really good things that we're wanting to share as we keep going, as we become a destination for social and content professionals inside of large brands. That's the episode. That's Radical Content. Enjoy telling more stories for your brands. We'll see you.